So for today we're going to see how to create a project and debug the code in a project. This is the workspace dialog. We'll start with a new workspace. Now you can either enter a path or browse to it. If it is a new directory, it will be created. In this case it is a new directory, so it will be created. A workspace is a container for one or more projects. Unless the projects are directly related, I like to use a separate workspace for each project. Okay. This is the welcome perspective. A perspective is a set of views, and we will see the use of more perspectives as we continue. As I said, this perspective is called the welcome screen, and we will use it to create a new project. Alright, we're going to call the project Lab 1. We're using a Tower MCF51CN board, so we'll pick that for the device. I'm going to be using a P&E USB BDM multi-link. You'll probably be using the open source BDM that comes on the board. We don't need to add any files to the project, so we'll leave that. These settings are as we wish to use them for now. We're not going to use Process Expert at this point, so we'll click Finish and create the project. Okay, now we are into the C++ view and our perspective, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and build the project. I used the build all item, or I could have pressed Control B. Then we're going to create a debug configuration. We're going to come down here to CodeWarrior download because we wish to download and burn the flash to the board. And we're going to go ahead and click debug because we've already built the project, which will automatically open the debug perspective. See up here, and it's now downloading it to the board and burning it into the flash. And here we are at the first line of executable code that was created for the project. So now we can click resume or press F8. The program is running on the board. I can pause it, and since we only have a for loop right here, it's running around in the for loop. I can then again resume it. I can terminate it, or I can disconnect. If I disconnect, the program will stay running on the board, but the BDM will no longer be connected to it. So I'm going to pick terminate. Now let's go over and look at the C++ perspective. So let's just add a little code here. I'm going to add a variable called counter, and as I loop around, I'm just going to increment counter. So I'm going to press Control S to save it. I'm going to rebuild the project, and since I already have a debug configuration set up, I can just click the little bug. It'll switch over to the debug perspective, download the code. Down here's the progress, and here we go. Alright, well, let's look around the debug environment a little bit. Up here we have the debug window, which essentially amounts to a stack trace. In this environment we'll really only have one thread, and if we come here, this is the first item in the stack trace, and we see the C startup code. The last instruction it executed was jump subroutine main. Come down here to main, which is where we left off execution, and we see over here our global variable counter, And if we go ahead and run it again and stop it, we again see where counter has left off. Now we can hover over this and see the value of counter. We can come up here and hover it over and see the value of counter, and we come back down to main here. Now let's just try setting a simple breakpoint. If I double click right here and resume, we'll see that counter is incrementing once each time through the loop. You can remove the breakpoint either by double clicking here again or coming over to our breakpoint window and either disabling it so it doesn't hit the breakpoint anymore, or deleting it. And we see over here this updates to show that the breakpoint is no longer there. Now coming back to the variable window, if we wanted to, we could set the value of this variable to 0. Now let's create a watch point. You click toggle watch point to add a watch point, and we want it to watch counter. Say OK to that. Come over here to breakpoints. Look at the properties of it, and let's put a condition in here for counter is equal to 10. Click OK. Come back here to the variable window. You see we've set it to 0. So let's resume again, and in a moment we hit our watch point and the value is 10. Set it back to 0. Run it again, and there we go. Now let's eliminate this, and let's come back over here and set it to be a global variable. Of course, it already is a global variable. This is putting it on the global variable list. Then let's come over here to refresh automatically and run it again. So we see that approximately once a second it will update the value here. So this concludes the introduction video, and thank you for watching.